Season 3, Episode 11. Whew. No, 10. Yeah, that's what I said. Episode 10. Great. Here to, due to recent explosive growth in the community, I am proud to introduce the one and only Hazard Bunny. Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So, welcome in. It's good to have you on. How's Marbles been? You seem to be going full hog on this thing.
It's been really good. I've been the last month and a half, I've actually slowed down significantly. I've only been on about once a week due to some personal stuff, but I should be hitting it pretty hard again soon. It's been fun. I don't know. I enjoy it significantly more than I was expecting to, I guess.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of effort, and you just keep doing it. Kind of sucks you in like that. It is weird.
Yeah. I think it's partially the people.
That it does help having the regulars around that keep everything hype and going and grinding on, as it were. What's your favorite part about the grind?
I don't know. I'm very kind of goal oriented and like competitive. I like that it's by season in terms of marbles, so I don't feel like there's always kind of an end to it and you kind of get to start over.
Yes.
And
yes.
so it's
The
not
clean
like
slate.
never ending, you're never going to catch up. It's like, okay, well, that went how it went. Let's see how next season goes.
Right. I've kind of find, because I've been talking to Pixel from time to time about this kind of stuff, and that it is a long season, and I know he's had thoughts of either abandoning seasons altogether or at least doing like intervaled seasons, so it could be like a featured 2 weeks and then 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on kind of thing, or 1 month on, 1 month off, something like that. What have you thought about, like, what would be the ideal grind structure, at least as far as seasons goes?
So it is kind of really long. It felt longer during the winter, or it's felt longer during the winter. I think it's just because like everything feels long when it's dark outside constantly.
Yeah.
But like, how long are seasons right now? What, like 8-10 weeks?
2 months.
2 months approximately. Yeah. It starts to feel really long around like week 5, week 6. I feel like that's the point where you get that like exhaustion, and
I think
you're
that's
like
universal.
But I think the hard part is at that point you've put so much time into it that you don't want to give up, right? But I think that's going to lend itself to burnout for a lot of people because you can't stop, but at the same time you're digging yourself into a little burnout hole.
Yeah, I was thinking like a single month grind would probably be really comfortable for a lot of people, but then that's the question, is like, is that good or not, right? Because if it's comfortable for a lot of people, then everyone's going to do it, and then it just kind of takes over the whole community rather than...
Yeah, I think like 5 or 6 weeks would probably be better than what we're currently at.
Maybe just a longer off period, like a 2 or 3 week off period.
Yeah, it just gives more people the chance, because it's hard to commit to 8 weeks for a lot of people, right? Like it's like, oh, I would do it, but I can't maintain this for 8 solid weeks or whatever it is.
And if you want to do like a big end of season event, then it's really hard to do a beginning of season event for the next season because they're back to back.
Yes, and
which
it
is
just
kind of
what
that's
part of that.
I had to work around that. Basically, I've written off the beginning of every season. It's just, I don't even look at it. I just build my 1 hour track, and then when I'm done, I'll start paying attention to the community again.
Well, yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm not really grinding as a streamer. I grind because I like providing an environment for people to hang out and drop a lot of marbles. I like making fast maps, but I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I could hit like top 10 in streaming as the streamers, just because I work full time and I have 2 kids.
Right.
And so I'd have to ignore them completely and like I guess not work. I don't know. I'm the income in the household, so my money is important.
Doing it all. Doing it all.
Yep. I
Was,
could maybe pull it off in the summer months because I don't teach in the summer, but
right.
it still would be a lot of working around the children. So either I wouldn't sleep or I wouldn't see my kids.
Tricky, tricky. I actually was one of my questions. It's like, what do you do or what do you advise as far as like balancing that life of personal life, work life, and stream life?
Um, Make sure you have a partner that is super supportive. That's pretty much it. Like he pushes me to stream, even when I'm doubting myself about streaming, because I'll be like, oh, I shouldn't stream tonight. Like, we need to do some more cleaning or we need to get stuff done. And he'll just be like, no, go do it. Like, you enjoy it, you need it, and like we can get stuff done later. Um, and that's pretty much the only reason I can do it. I think most people have trouble streaming when they have kids and they work because they don't have somebody that's supporting them through it.
Right.
Because
right.
I like if he didn't, there's no way I could do it if he didn't support me, because it would just like that would probably kill our relationships, right? Like if I was constantly hiding in the office doing things with other people, and I mean, like a lot of people would feel neglected, but he's sweet. He understands it's good for me.
Well, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem to be the common denominator for anyone. Really, is just a support network of some kind, so that they aren't like just having people around that understand the commitment, so that you can kind of like rationalize it and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah, well, that's really it. Like I don't know if you're not usually up late enough to be in my streams, but like he brings me food, he brings me drinks, and like brings me things when I need them. So like to help me keep going, because there would be.
That's good.
I mean, yeah, especially when you're doing the long streams, it's really hard. I need to take more breaks when I do that, but I'm like, once I'm like focused on something, I don't want to stop. I feel like I'll lose momentum.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Kind of get into that zone, that space.
Yeah, you kind of get like hyped up and you're like, yes, I'm here. Let's do this. I think I don't get enough sleep, so if I let it like taper off, then my body's like, okay, we're done. Goodbye.
You have to maintain the distraction uninterrupted.
Yeah. Don't let your brain catch up. You're like, no, it's fine. We're good. Let's just keep doing this.
I like that. I think as far as like how I view the grind, because I'm probably going to be doing a lot more tilting next season.
That's fun.
So I'm going to be a bit more grind sensitive than I have been in the past. And it's a matter of like what things can go to the wayside and what can't, kind of a thing. So I have to like prioritize everything. So obviously there's like weekly shows that I want to keep up with, and there's other things that I want to keep going, but if we're going to commit to the grind, there's only going to be so much extra stream time that isn't grinding.
Yeah, that's the hard part too. And tilting's hard because you can't do a lot else while you're tilting. Although I know some of the tilters
In the early levels,
can
you can.
multitask.
Up to about 25.
I'm like, what?
Up to about 25,
some of them,
I
they'll
can
come talk to me, and I'm like, you're tilting right
around.
now. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I'm so bad at it.
It just takes time.
Yeah, but I mean, at least with like regular marbles grinding, there's, a lot of that like heavy grinders. I know, but Vibbles is here, but like they're not constantly on camera and they're not constantly like fully engaging while they're streaming because they're streaming for 12 or 15 hours and there's just, I mean, most people can't handle being like fully engaged for that amount of time.
You can set up a battle royale and walk away for 10 minutes.
Yeah, like you
can't load up level 25 and walk away for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can, but it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I guess would be the difference with tilting. I really like tilting. I would like to get good at it. I'm not sure I have the focus for it.
If you want to go for distance, there's definitely a patience and mindset required. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my highest, my personal best, I think I got to 21. It might have been 20, which was pretty, I mean, I felt pretty good about that. And
Mm-hmm.
then that next like level chunk, I just couldn't, I haven't gotten past it because it was still taking me a while to get there. And
Right.
so every time I get there, I didn't get very much practice on it. And so like
That's
if
the
I
problem.
tilted all the time, I could do it, but that takes like a huge chunk of a stream, if
Yep.
not an entire stream.
Yep.
And right now I stream so little that comparatively that it's basically I'm either going to tilt or I'm gonna do regular
That's tilted.
streams. Back when I was streaming like every day, it was a lot easier to like tilt for a while and then run races. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Maybe we'll get back to that. It'll be fun.
Cool. It's it is very much a commitment for practice anyway, because it does have that aspect where like you have to grind it out to get to the levels you need to practice on,
Yeah.
and then you have to like reset by the time you get there and be like, okay, we're here now. Now I have to actually like focus and do the things and pay attention to all this stuff.
So what is it about tilting that you really like? Like, why do you want to spend more time on it?
I just feel like the game mode needs more attention. I think it's something that streamers can engage the viewers in with more if they can just take the extra effort to do it. And then also for the viewer side of things, especially on the grinder side of the things, it's actually very effective and efficient if it's done right. You know, a lot of people will say it, most of the time tilted's not worth the points. You'd rather have just the 6 or 7 racing tabs open. But if you didn't need to have racing tabs open and you just had 10 to 20 tilt streams open, then you don't even have to pay attention, because there's no energy tier, there's no like minimum set races or anything like that. You can literally just drop as often as you can copy paste pretty much. So
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like when I did my long streams on Sundays, I liked starting with a tilt because it was nice to actually just see all the grinders because they would like if you run grinding streams and you tilt, like all of the grinders show up, right?
right.
Like if they know you.
Yeah.
And so like there were Sundays where like I'd have 35, 40 balls when I was tilting. Like I won't maintain that once I switch to races, but like it was always just nice to get to say hi to them because I wouldn't always see them, right? Because like people have tiers of people that they want to drop balls with.
Right.
And so if they're already dropping in 6 streams, right, they're not going to necessarily switch over.
Right.
But with tilting, everybody can come say hi.
And it's that thing too, is like if there were as many people tilting as racing, I think a lot more viewers would be on board, because you only need like about 20 people tilting and you can get 1,000 points per minute, almost guaranteed, or per hour. So
yeah,
it's definitely effective if the support network's there. So that's kind of what next season I'm hoping to achieve, is generate a strong enough tilt support network that there's going to be at least 20 to 50 people tilting every day for a couple hours, and then there'll be the big ones that are doing 6 to 8 hours every day, or at least a couple times a week.
Yeah.
And if we can kind of coordinate that, so it's like, okay, on Tuesday from noon to 10 p.m. there's going to be everyone tilting, and like everyone shows up, and there's like every streamer has 75 marbles and they're getting the XP they need, and all the grinders don't have to worry about races, so they're just going point crazy. Because like when I did the tilted tournaments with 25 to 30 people, that's what would happen, is like everyone stopped racing and they're like, I got to get in all these tilts, and they're like, I'm getting 1,500 points a minute or hour, this is crazy, like I love it. So I think there's a potential there. It may not be something that's 24/7 sustainable, but I think it can be regular enough to give tilted the attention I would say it deserves. So
that would be awesome.
That's where I'm at.
I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll hopefully be posting some info in my Discord and Pixel's Discord about what we're kind of looking at for next season, and then we'll see how many bite. I've got a lot of people like asking me in my channel, which is nice.
That's good. So, interest is good.
It'd be nice to see how many are totally interested once we get it a bit more broad.
What are you drinking?
I'm having just plain old Lady Grey today. Nothing fancy. I usually have my own tea set up, but Not for
Drinking
today.
my really, really fancy water.
Very fancy. Ice and a handle.
And a handle, yes. I just in case. I don't actually use the handle half the time. I don't know why we have things with handles. But yeah, it's before noon for me, so I had to stick to water for a while,
Makes sense.
at least for the first half of the day.
Along the lines of meta, I was going to ask some things about track building and track meta from your perspective, since you are somewhat of a builder and somewhat of a track racer.
Somewhat a builder. Yeah, it's so funny because I've always obviously built a bunch of tracks. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing when I'm building tracks. Every time I go to build a track, I'm like, I should know what I'm doing by now. I still have no idea. For me, I don't know if you guys can hear the screaming children in the background.
Nope.
Hopefully not. For me, all my maps are grind maps, but I like to call them acceptable grind maps. They're not like pure grind maps, but they work for grinding.
Statistically viable.
Yeah, so I like things to be pretty, and I like things to look good and be interesting, and there's only so much of that you can do if you're looking for like a pure grind map, right?
Correct.
Like it's going to be significantly harder to keep it interesting. And so my acceptable times and like my acceptable like death rate and whatnot's a little bit different than the pure grind maps. Yeah, always with my microphone, it's always hard because occasionally my kids will just scream bloody murder in the other room, and I have no idea if anybody can hear it. I'm like, I promise they're okay. They're just small. And they scream about everything. It's not death screams. I would freak out if I like thought they were actually injured, but there's an adult out there. They're fine. But I really like the challenge of trying to get a map to hit like certain specifications, right? Like in terms of getting it to test where, you know, that last ball's not going across that track too late, because that's a lot of the maps that are short,
right?
But they're not good grind maps because, you know, one of the balls takes 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go across the end. And I think that's like the mistake a lot of people make when they first trying to make grind maps, is they're just looking at the average and like not the overall.
There's a lot more to consider than just the two numbers. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, or you know, because if you have anywhere balls can get stuck for a while, like it will always, that end number is always going to be too high. Which is why it is so funny, because I Marbles runs different on everyone's computers.
Yeah.
So like I will test a map hundreds of times, and I have averages, and I'm like looking at if there's any like weird anomalies that happen, and as soon as that map goes live, someone has
right
an
out the window.
It's almost always Vibble. I blame Vibble's computer at this point, because he like I literally get screenshots from him and he's like, this isn't working. God damn it, Vibbles. But like so a lot of my maps have been taken down many times and then put back up, trying to fix issues that I can't necessarily test for, and so that's always kind of an experience. But it helps when it always helps when people let you know. For me anyway, I don't know if people feel weird about telling you when something's wrong with your map. I like it when people tell me that they're having issues with it, because I'd rather take it down and fix it.
I think people are desperate to find things wrong with my maps.
At this point, well, because you have
like, Shen missed one, we got him.
So I do that sometimes when I'm running maps of pretty, we'll call them big map makers or known map makers, and there's something wrong with it, and I'm like, gosh dang it, so and so, like, what are you doing? Because you're like, this is, but again, it happens to all of us because we can't control how other people's computers perform when they're running the tracks, and so
whatever testing you do is always going to be insignificant statistically to the total runs
like
of
it's
your
good
map.
You need to do it, but at the same time, you also just have to be prepared that some of the maps aren't going to perform the same once they're up.
Having built 7 1-hour tracks, I've learned when things can be fixed and when things can't be fixed. It's just
Yeah, that's the hard part. Sometimes there'll be something wrong with a map, and you're like, okay, my choices are to completely re rebuild the map,
mm,
or just scrap it. Like I've had a couple of maps that have been retired because I liked the map, but they didn't work the way they needed to, and um there was just a point where there was no point in trying to fix it. Like
right.
it would be easier just to make a whole new map, which is fine. It's good. I like trying new things. So
Yeah, and that's especially with like the 1 hour tracks. I think the one thing most people overlook in that process, because there's other people that try to build 1 hour maps, and some of them do well, some of them don't, and it's knowing what constructions will likely work universally and what will, like what
yeah,
risks you can take and what risks you can't take. So something like a bongo pad, like don't touch it. Don't touch the bongo pads. I don't think a bongo pad is the same on any two computers. I really don't. They are a nightmare.
yeah.
So there's always things like that, or like the intermission piece. That's the ring. Don't put
Hmm.
marbles through those. You can shoot marbles through the big opening, but don't put marbles in them. Just don't do it.
Well,
It's
that's
no
always funny
good.
because I've had people be like, like, why don't you use these map pieces? Because there's some pieces we just stay away from
Mm-hmm.
completely. And it's like, because they don't
Because they're
work
bad.
consistently enough for what we need them to do. If I was just making like lackadaisical maps for, fun and
Mm-hmm.
for like the chill, not grindy streamer, it wouldn't matter because like they
Right.
don't care. But when you've got people that are trying, like if you're trying to accomplish something specific, like you just have to be careful.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like I couldn't imagine building a 1 hour map. I've seen you working on them, and like I don't know if I have that patience, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's
Like I could do it, but
there's a lot
I'm
of
like a
redundancy. There's a lot of redundancy,
yeah.
and that's something I've learned to make more efficient. Um, is that I used to want to get the rough outline in and then fill in the details because that's how I do a normal map. But then if you need to move something, oops,
Yeah.
that is, and you just have to basically rebuild the entire map. So instead, I just do it one thing and I perfect it, and then I get to the next thing and then I perfect it, and then while I'm working on that second thing, I'm still testing the whole map. So I'm keeping an eye on the first section as like so I'm both play testing the first section and working on the second section at the same time. So there's this way to make more efficient the process. Basically, every playtest needs to count, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I definitely like I I hate having to go back and add things into like the middle of the map or
Mm-hmm.
like earlier on in the map. Like that drives me crazy. I hate having to move huge chunks of the map.
Yeah.
Like I much rather get the pieces done individually, like as you go, and make sure that they're constantly working.
Right.
Which is part of the reason why fixing some of the maps just drives me crazy, because like there's sometimes you like have to go back and like take a thing out
Mm-hmm.
and then nothing fits there, so you have to move stuff around and you're like,
Yep. That's why I'm of the
oh
philosophy of not re-uploading maps. I'd rather just take the idea and make a better map.
yeah,
That's my
make a
usual
better
approach.
version. I like making new maps now because I get to add new bunnies to them, because all of them have names,
It's a
and
good
so when I
signature.
add new maps we get to name new bunnies, which can be fun. Yeah, that's actually so. I only added a bunny to my map because while I was creating one of the maps, I was in voice chat with Vibbles, and he was working on his map and he was adding a V to his map, and I was like, oh, I should add something to my map, and so I
Mm-hmm.
spent like 3 hours trying to figure out what I could add to the map.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tried to like make like an HB, like I tried to make all of these other things, and nothing looked good. And then I was finally like, you know what, I'm gonna make a bunny, and I did out of blocks.
There you go.
And people liked that a lot. It got to the point like it only added it to, I didn't even have it on all my maps. I had it on a couple of my maps, and some people, like, it was like people were pointing it out, I think audiovisual was the first person I was like in his stream, and he was playing some of my maps, and he's like, "This one doesn't have a bunny," and I was like, "Oh,
How dare you?"
and he's like, "I always look for the bunny," and I was like, "Okay, I'll go add a bunny to it." And so I'm at the point now, like I very rarely forget to put a bunny on a map, but occasionally I'll upload one and then I'll be like, "Oh dang it," because I always add it last.
Right.
The bunny's
right.
always going last, which
Sometimes
is always
you don't
fun
have
when
enough
I
obstacles left over. So
yeah, when I run out of obstacles, I'm like, "Gosh, dang it." I generally know to leave enough at this point, so I don't, don't have to go back and mess with a few things. Usually, it's pretty easy to get rid of a few obstacles if I need to. The bunny doesn't actually take up that many.
Right. Yeah.
Which is nice.
Pretty efficient.
Because
just good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bunnies are the advantage of a unique silhouette.
Yeah, I like it because it's simple, but like you can tell what it is on all of the maps, and they're kind of creepy. I think that's like they're cute, but like they're kind of creepy, especially the ones with some of like the weird eyes.
Maybe
freaks people out. It's good.
Maybe not quite Eye of Scarro or Charlie's Peculiar Stuff creepy, but I guess a little creepy.
I'm too cute.
Maybe more ominous. Maybe we could just say ominous.
Yes.
Less creepy.
You're like, I feel. It's just that like feeling of like maybe not quite right. It's not really scary, just a little off.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, as far as the meta goes, actually for track building, I was talking about this on Ask a Builder Anything yesterday. But someone was talking about the initial meta for the first update in track builder stuff was 1 to 3 minute tracks. And they're wondering if favoring 3 minutes rather than favoring 1 minute would be ideal. And I think for builders it would be, but I don't think it would be good for the grind, honestly. Because especially on the racer side of things, right? So if you're doing 3 minutes a map plus the in-between time, that's like one tier in one stream every 15 minutes. More or less, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you might only be able to do like 5 streams at a time then, rather than 6 or 7, right? And then if you think about that, if you're going for the full 100, that's 25 tiers. That's 8 hours minimum, right? Like that's
like a long time commitment.
That's rough. It's rough. As good as I think it would be for builders. It just doesn't seem like it would fit the grind well enough based on the current structure. Obviously, you could change the energy, you could change tiers, and you'd have to
it would have to be worth it.
Be a package deal.
I don't know. Like I've never tried grinding racing, and I struggle to drop balls because I have no focus. But when I'm watching a stream and it's 2 minutes between races and the races take 3 or 4 minutes, I get like I'm significantly less likely to drop because I get like lost because I can't. If it's constant, it's much easier to like maintain. But if you have to like constantly be checking to see where you're at, I don't know if that just takes too much extra energy, especially if you're in multiple streams. But then again, I haven't.
I'm usually working on other things, or if I'm not, I'm actually like engaged in the stream.
Yeah, it's like talking to the streamer.
Yeah, either I'm talking too much to everyone and I forget to play, or I'm doing too many other things and I miss the drop window. So like
every time I raid,
even if it's just one stream, like there'll be times when people are like, "Hey, could you stick around and finish your tiers?" It takes me like half an hour to finish. It's like, okay, I gotta go. It's like, oh, could you finish your tier real quick before you go? I was like, sure. And then I'm there for like another half hour because I keep missing drops, even though it's the only stream I'm watching. It's like I am the worst grinder on the planet.
Yeah, it's always funny. There's always at least a few people that you have to I have to yell at and be like, "Hey, pay attention for the next 2 minutes. You need to drop a ball. Then you're done. Then you can go." But it's fun. I don't know.
I hear. So I notice your avatar has full purple hair, and you have no longer full purple hair.
No, my hair is growing out.
Is there a change coming, or are you just overdue for more purple?
Yes, I actually don't know what hair color I'm going to have next. So my sister-in-law does my hair. She's not a professional. Um, she does it because I let her do whatever she wants to it. It takes a very long time. So
Mm.
I did my hair in October, beginning of October, basically for my birthday. My birthday's the end of September. And I have a lot of hair. And so it takes a long time to bleach it. And then she decided to put like a million colors in my hair last time.
Nice.
And so it took like over 12 hours for her to get the color into my hair. We watched a lot of IT Crowd on Netflix together while she was doing my
Perfect.
hair. But like it just takes a really like my hair is really I mean it's longer now obviously, but like it's really long and I have very thick hair. I think she said she wants to do a gradient this time, so it shouldn't take as long.
Because then you can
It
just
should
do
happen
one
in the
layer
next
at a
couple
time.
of weeks.
Yeah.
Like she's just gonna do, instead of doing a bunch of different colors, she's just gonna do like a color that fades into another color that fades into another
Right.
color, which shouldn't take as long. Because with this, she did 6 different color combinations where she had like a dark color on top and a lighter color on the bottom, and so that's 12 different like colors that she had, and she did this to herself. I did not ask her. I was like, just keep it in like the purple, blue, teal range, because those are the only like hair colors I really like. But I was like, you can do whatever you want because I'm not paying you, so like this is your fun, so you do whatever you want.
There's a head popping in.
Sorry, I had a look.
I was like, is it me? Like,
There's
where
a head
did you come
popping in.
from?
It's fine. We're good.
You in my
More the man
office?
behind the curtain.
It's just the background tech. He's fixing some wiring. Let's see. What else do I have up in the line? I guess more broadly, we've been talking about marbles the whole time.
We do. I mean,
Blizzard
marbles.
is a game company I talk about quite often. One
Okay.
you're familiar with, I think. A particular World of Warcraft game in there. What do you want to tell us about your World of Warcraft experience? How did it happen and why did it happen?
That absorbed a lot of my youth. It happened because I have 2 older brothers.
Oh, okay.
And when World of Warcraft came out, I was a senior in high school, and my 2 eldest brothers, my brother, I have a half brother as well, were living together, and they started playing immediately. They actually at the time were playing online poker for a living, so they were always home. And so they like hit 60 like within a few weeks when it originally released. They were so crazy. Anyway, and then my middle brother, the one closest to me in age, I'm the youngest, he was living with me and my parents, my mom and my stepdad at the time, and so he was playing as well. I didn't have my own account. I actually played on his account when he was at work. So whenever he was working, I would go up into his room and play on his account with his permission. He knew I was doing it. I didn't like sneak into my brother's room.
Extra XP farming, so can't complain about that.
Yeah, well, it was really funny because I at the time I probably could have afforded to buy the game and the account myself because I worked, but like I was just sort of playing because I was playing on the same server as my brothers and it was fun, and then some of my other friends ended up playing as well. But I actually ended up playing so much more than my brother that he just gave me the account and bought himself a new account because I hit 60 before him, and he was like, okay, you know what, you can have this account. I was like, I love you. So I still have his account. It was really funny because I always typed in his username and then like his password. And now obviously like the way that Blizzard does like account logins and stuff, I don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
It's all like hooked up to email and all that jazz with your battle tag and whatnot. But like for the longest time I was logging into my brother's account, which was fun. But yeah, I pretty much just like got lost in that for the end of high school, and then pretty much my entire college career I played World of Warcraft pretty heavily. I played a priest, holy priest. I healed for before there were any expansions. I think when the first expansion came out, I did PvP for a while, which I really liked. But I think it was like the second or third expansion I sort of just stopped trying. Like I didn't raid anymore. I wasn't like, I just played casually. There's a point when I like just couldn't maintain the same commitment to it that I had when I had, no responsibilities or um, things like that. It was so nice back then.
Simpler times for sure.
It was a simpler, like I could play games for like, 12, 14 hours and it like affected nothing. Like I didn't have to plan for it.
Right. Right.
All I had to do was go to school and, I was in a math degree, so it's not like it was easy, but it, as long as I got a few hours of sleep, I really miss being in my early 20s when you could like literally sleep for 3 hours and not like die the next day. If I only got 3 hours of sleep right now, I would literally die. Like I don't even think I'd be able to get out of bed. I'd be like, nope. Like whatever we're doing today, it's not happening.
Makes sense. For me, after college, it was StarCraft 2 that I really got into. So that's kind of where my big time spent around that period was. I'd done StarCraft 1 before that. I'd done Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3 before that, Diablo 2, Diablo 3. But I always liked real-time strategies the most, rather than the first-person or third-person games. I just like the idea of it's like wrapping your head around the entire construction, rather than just being one part of many. It's you are the many. So I like that top-down aspect to games, like Command and Conquer. Great game company. Really loved pretty much all the ones that they came out with. I think Generals and Tiberian Sun were my two favorite ones of those. But even like Age of Empires. Did you ever play Age of Empires?
I played it so much when I was younger.
Age of Empires
I reinstalled it recently because I had like a weird urge to play it.
Good.
I'm like, I need to play Age of Empires right now.
It's still good.
It's still good. Like I died. I was like, how did I die? Like how am I this bad at this game?
I think my favorite thing I had worked on Age of Empires 2 was a Teutonic Night Rush. So you played as the Teutons, and I could get a Teutonic Knight before most people had like longbowmen. And so I could literally just send like one Teutonic Knight to their base, and they wouldn't be able to handle it because they didn't have any tech to take them down.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny part. There's a lot of them where you can just sort of, if you can just do certain things fast enough, you could just kill everybody because they have no way to defend if they were being practical with their planning. And you're like.
And then the other one I would just turtle the whole time, and I would just amass elephant warriors. And then when I couldn't build any more, then there would just be this stampede of elephants that just goes across the whole map, just wiping it clean.
Yeah.
So
I really wish I had more time to play video games right now. Like there's so many games that I want to try. I find myself, especially now that I've gotten older, and maybe this is why I like streaming marbles, is I like playing social games significantly more, and it's maybe because I don't get as much social time, and 2020 specifically pretty much destroyed that.
Yes.
Not that I like went out very often before then. I have two small children, but not being able to just makes you crave it more, I think. And so, like this year, I played a bunch of Ark. I played World of Warcraft again for a bit with some friends. I played Minecraft. I basically played any game that I could play with other people.
Right.
And not even like, I really like those games. I love Ark, but the part about it that I was craving was just doing it with someone else, like feeling like I was, hanging out with somebody and actually doing something together.
Yeah, it is a little weird how that works out, because like very early young adult time period, like getting together twice a week for like 4 to 6 hours is pretty easy and regular. But then like as you have to start prioritizing other stuff, you kind of don't have time for that, but somehow you still have time for like 2 hours, maybe 3. And so rather than wasting half of that with like traveling and meeting up and cooking food and all that stuff, you can just log into the server and do it that way. It's just a bit more efficient, but it still kind of serves that same purpose.
Yeah, it definitely, like, as I've gotten older, all my friends have kind of spread out. It's like we're not that super far from each other. I think my farthest friend in the region is like an hour and a half away, which isn't really far, but when you have kids and you have other things going on, that commute time you basically need to spend the whole day with them, like to make it worth doing that drive. And there are very few times where you can just like block out a full day
Right.
where you don't have anything else that you have to do. Whereas with games, it's like you can kind of hop in and out with each other when you have time. So like I, may be able to be on my laptop on the couch. And so like the kids may be running around screaming, but like I can still, hang out and chat and stuff to some degree. A lot of my friends have kids now, so it's a lot easier because they like are so used to the just like sound of craziness in the background that like no one cares. It's harder when I'm playing with my online friends that don't have children and don't have families, and so
it's a new normal.
Yes, they either get used to it or we don't play very much. But I guess for marble streaming, it's nice because I just get to talk to people.
Yep.
And like hang out.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much it.
It's another kind of thing I like to entertain is like what that will be in the future a little bit, right? Because streaming is still relatively new, even though it's been around for like about 10 years now. Like, still relatively new. And there wasn't streaming before, and now there is streaming, and then you have to kind of wonder like what's going to happen further down the road. Is it going to be more VR? Is it going to be augmented reality? Is it going to be like, what's going to be the next iteration of that kind of hanging out, playing together in the modern world?
Yeah, it's curious to think about because I'm not sure, 10, 15 years ago they could have predicted that this would be really normal now. Seems like what it's going to evolve into over time. It's interesting because like my daughter's turning 6 in 5 days, but she loves watching game playthroughs. She watches like Zebra. I don't know, there's a couple of people that do game playthroughs, but she really likes watching like pre-recorded game playthroughs of like Mario and Minecraft and other things that people do, like the kid safe streamers.
YouTube gaming.
Yeah, well, and she finds that just as interesting as watching, a movie or like a show.
Right.
And so I'm just curious, like the next generation of kids, because like I grew up we didn't have really internet or a computer until I was a preteen, and even then that was still like real old school, so like not the internet that we think about today. But like the difference in their preferences, like what they're going to be, really interesting. Curious.
Yeah, it's weird to think about for sure. I think also, I think the best thing we have to compare it to is kind of movies, right? And so the themes of movies is always what's possible in that current time period. So when they first started making movies, really the only thing that was possible was hyper realistic or very like archaic manipulation of film, like projecting a face on the moon and then having that interact with other actors on a set, right? And so that's what the movies were. It was get into a rocket and fly to the moon kind of a thing. Where now with your computer generated stuff, it's practically open, so it's a lot more fantasy driven now. And I think as that gets even further, I think we'll either get to pixel perfect representation or we'll get to like a mechanical cheap manufacturing with like 3D printing and everything. It'll be very easy to just like make the things you need for a movie without costing too much. And between both of those, I could very easily see a shift away from fantasy and back much more into like storytelling, where it's so easy to manufacture the worlds that the world isn't the attraction anymore. The world's just the setting. And then we're going to refocus in on that actual storytelling. And I feel like that's going to be a big part of it. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen with like a lot of online entertainment. And you can kind of see it happening now. It's like with YouTube especially, We've gone away from the strict gameplay, and now it's like people reviewing games or people telling a funny tale of the game. Like if you look at Video Game Donkey or Gray Still Plays, they're not doing playthroughs. They're telling a story about the game's life, about what the game was. And so you can kind of see that starting to become a bit more the main front. And especially with Minecraft, it used to all be like, you know, different things you could do or things no one's ever seen before. And now it's much more like, you know, the 140-week long running RP that this group of 12 people's been doing, or, you know, these 30-minute videos of start to finish weird constraints and weird changes to the world that they have to figure out in real time and get to the end of the game anyway, despite whatever was changed in the game. So there's very much story based that I can kind of see becoming the next takeover as things get easier to produce physically and visually.
I definitely think that's something that's been kind of lacking in some media platforms. Because you're seeing it with some of the games that are coming out. The ones that are really, really strong in story are tending to be a little bit more popular. And I don't know if it's just because our movies and stuff are terrible now. I mean, there's been some good movies, but like it's. I feel like we've hit like a weird lull where there's a lot less like unique things coming out that are interesting. Like we've seen everything. Like
and that's
when
what
movies
I'm
first
kind of
came
touching
out,
on
like,
is
they could do whatever because
right.
it hadn't been done before, right? So now it's, are we recreating an old movie or are we doing a new take on it? Like what sets our movie apart? And I think a lot of the directors and stuff, they haven't really quite found where to go with this.
And that is kind of that frontier expansion, right? It's like we're finally at a point where pretty much any idea you have, you can create. So that's going to be, you kind of have to get that out of your system. It's that flush population of the new environment. And then cities start to develop, and then highways start to develop, and then you start refining things and creating better product and stuff like that. So it is a bit of the Wild West out there, and I think that's just where we are developmentally based on the technology.
It's definitely interesting. I took a bunch of game design classes because I was bored. And one of the professors, you know, he said he was talking to us about game ideas, and he's like, ideas are cheap. Everyone has a million game ideas, right? Like you could ask anybody, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I totally have a good idea for a game. I have two. Yeah, but it's always, does it really, like, can you develop everything behind that idea that will make that game interesting or good or enjoyable? Because the ideas is not really the most important part. It's the story, it's the development of it so that it's accessible for people. And so I think we're just seeing that as like a lot of people can make a lot of bad stuff very easily, and so I feel like we're not seeing as much of the like high quality content coming out. But I think we're going to start switching to seeing that again, maybe, hopefully, in the near future.
I think so. We'll get there. Might take a couple more years once the technology's been a bit more refined, but I think we'll get there. I think also, speaking back of YouTube too, is you can kind of see it in the makers sphere. Any of the instructional or behind the scenes or just basic construction videos are very popular on YouTube. So there's a lot of innate curiosity in how things are produced. And I think once you have enough audience that's well informed on that, they'll have a higher appreciation for those things. So like one of the things I saw recently is I think they were doing I don't know if it's actually a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but it's that kind of story. And I think Nicolas Cage is involved. But the promo I saw, the mechanoid he was fighting was CG, and I was like, that is the biggest waste of everything. Like, so you're taking this thing that was a video game that its entire popularity was built around YouTube, and you have all these YouTubers who, for a living, with great audience followings, like make things. Like, you could have so many people willing to work on this to make actual robots and actual set, like, that would draw the audience, because people would want to see, like, they would see the YouTube creator who made the one mech for the one character for the movie, and then they want to see the movie because they want to see the final product. Like, there's this whole opportunity there, and I think stuff like that is what an informed audience is going to be craving.
I definitely, so CGI is getting significantly better. I definitely dislike a lot of, real people with next to CGI, because it's still not quite right.
Right.
And I think our brains, even though it looks pretty good, like it looks really good, it's like our brains just know that it's not right, and so it like takes you out of that immersion. Like the Mandalorian, right? Like they used a puppet for Yoda, like a robotic thing. And I think that was a lot more realistic for people, and like that felt a lot more real for people than if they had just done him completely with CGI. Like obviously that show uses a bunch of CGI, but when it comes to like connecting to characters or like things that we're supposed to form a bond with, it's harder to do that when there's so much CGI involved in it. If it's like completely animated, that's one thing, right? Because then there's no like, you're already immersed in that reality, and so it's fine. But I think humans are just weird with like what we form attachments to and like what our brain gets upset about.
Right.
And it's like completely subconscious. So you're not like sitting there. I mean, you might be. Some people might be like, oh, this is so like not selling it to me.
I think it actually has the opposite effect for me, because especially with stuff like Avengers, like you'll see that a lot of the things they're doing is real with like stunt people. That's like really incredible. But because everything around them is CG, you think it's all CG. So like you're taking these great feats from these great stunt workers, and you don't even believe it. And that's what I mean. Like it's wasted. It's like we're capable of doing really cool physical things with the new technologies we have, and if you can embrace that, the educated audience is going to appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Whereas once you introduce the obvious CG, then you start thinking it's all fake, and then you don't care about it as much, because the art behind it, you no longer appreciate as much. Not to say that CG is easy and it's not art, it is. But I think most CG artists will tell you their best work goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
Like you would probably not believe how much CG happens in car chases. Like most of the cars in car chases are not real these days. Like every car that no one is in, that's coming the opposite direction, usually fake. Every car parked on the street that they're narrowly dodging, fake. Like, but it's easy because it's a still object. It's not moving. It's got metallic surfaces. It's very easy to replicate. And that way you can have the stunt driver do the real thing, and it's very impressive, and you appreciate the stunt being done, and you don't recognize the minor stuff being CG that makes the whole thing safer to do. And like that's the way to go about it, is you need to embrace the arts for their strengths.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I agree.
Good stuff. I like it. Well, I think we've reached about halfway. Would you care for a little midstream mix-up?
Sure, let's do it. What are we doing?
We're doing the midstream mix-up! Yeah! Good stuff. I did Dagger here when I was in college. For those of you who don't know, that's the crazy people that beat each other with foam weapons. And you've done some stuff in your life, role playing and whatnot.
A little bit of role playing. I've actually gone to a few SEA events, not as a participant. I just watched people beat each other with with safe objects.
It's a lot of fun, both being in it and watching it, I must say.
It was really fun watching it. I really like watching the kids do it, because I feel like they get into it the most. Like they have zero fear They're like, let's just assault each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been around it. I haven't been in it very much. I
Well,
did a little bit of cosplay, but that's not quite the same thing.
yeah, having both of us been in those situations, I think the one thing people will always hear about are like the freak out stories and things like that. But I don't think they understand the depth of the freak out and why there's the freak out. And there's a lot of rules that go unspoken to the spectator that allow things to happen as they do, and breaking those rules can cause a lot of problems, both politically and even just in the actual function of the game itself. So maybe we could each dive into our own personal stories of the worst breaches of etiquette we've witnessed, having participated in such environments.
That's so hard because like I don't know, I'm such a chill person. So it doesn't bother me as much. But I think you should tell me yours first
Okay.
because I need to think about it a
So,
little bit more.
when I started doing Dagger here, I initially did dual wielded swords. And I did like a broader sword so I could block with them. So it's kind of like it was having a sword and a shield, but it was two swords. But I was using it like a sword and a shield, which, you know, if you're fighting someone who's doing that, it fools your anticipation because you initially engage as if they have two weapons, but then they're using one of the weapons as a shield. So then you adjust your fighting strategy to a sword and shield combat, and then you forget that I can stab you with the shield. So it's a hard tactic for a lot of people to grab onto, so I was pretty successful with it. But my most successful was javelin throwing. I made 6 javelins, and making safe javelins is very difficult because they need to be sturdy enough and light enough to be thrown, but they still need to be padded enough and in the right dimensions and restrictions to be safe. And I had the leader of my group test the javelins every day or every time to make sure that they were up to snuff because, you know, the padding wears down over time. You don't want to hurt anybody. But I would still knock people on their ass. I got nicknamed the Arbalist. So there were a lot of people who called me Ballista, and I could literally like solo a team with my javelins because I was pretty fast on my feet, and so I could pretty much kite the entire group and just pick them off one at a time with my javelins. And you can still use a javelin two-handed, but you can't slash with it. You can only stab with it, so it's not easy, but you can do it. And it was really weird because the leader of the group had tested my javelins that day, and then I clocked him square on the side of the head with a full arm shot from about maybe 10-15 meters away, and he like crumpled to the ground, and he was like furious, and he grabbed the weapon and he's like testing it and feeling the foam. He's like, "What's wrong with this weapon?" I was like, "Nothing. I just hit you full strength, man. I'm sorry." And he was sour for the rest of the day. He was like, just, it was so weird because he actually like he tested the weapon, and then I knocked him down with it, and he was just like, "No, this weapon's not within regulation." He just completely lost it. And I think he was just a little upset that, you know, the quick little fast guy running around knocked him on his ass without even touching him. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I've been thinking about this and like I can't think of like a specific instance like that that I have like blatantly seen. Um I during one of my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, we definitely had a few instances where one of our players uh like completely just kind of like went off the rails in terms of like what was happening, like completely
yeah.
unexpected. Um where you couldn't quite figure out whether or not they like they definitely weren't being malicious, but they just seemed to have like no concept of anything that was like anything that was
Right.
happening. Um and you know there was like we had a couple of instances where we had people end up just like drop out of the group because like they tried to do things that like no one else in the group was okay with, you know. And I think that's like a really weird thing about role playing is like you're all individually being like your own character, but at the same time you're playing with other people,
right?
Like not everyone likes to play the same way.
You have to bend to keep the story going.
Right. Like if you do something that screws over everybody else in the group, you know, you get people mad at you for doing that. And you know, we had that happen one time. It ended up being like really explosive. But those were pretty much like my only instances of where you're kind of like why are you doing this? When I was in high school, I did improv, like competitive improv. I was really bad at it, just so y'all know, like really bad. But we had a couple of instances where it's like a team sport and you're like doing scenes together, and you occasionally like there's one where we're doing like in the middle of a scene and one of the other people just like comes on and he completely like destroys the scene for no reason and then like walks off, right? And you're like stuck there. You're like, I guess this is how this is going now. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like a really good specific example and I can't think of one. I'm sorry. Like
it's fine. It happens.
Blanking. Yeah.
Still good. I think one of the causes there at least is like you said, each person's playing their character, and there's always the desire to be like true to your character because it's your character. But then there is always we would always call it the clue bat in my D&D campaigns. It's like sometimes when the DM suggests something, he's telling you to do something politely.
He's making a polite suggestion
he's saying, yes, your character might do that, but that also might completely destroy the entire campaign, and maybe you should do a different thing, which might also be still within line of your character.
Yeah. And I think, and again, any sort of role-playing game or any sort of situation like that, whether you're doing it with actual objects or you're just doing it completely in an imaginary world, it's like, and you know, when you're playing with other people, everybody has their own idea of how you play these games, because they don't have, I mean, obviously there are rules and things that you have to follow, but part of the joy of the game is that it's incredibly flexible and you can kind of play it your own way. And anytime you get more than two people involved in anything, like the chances of them completely agreeing on how you should play something is pretty much gone. People can't even agree on how to play Uno, so you know, there's definitely like that level of making sure that like you're willing to play nicely with other people.
Yeah, I think my most successful D&D campaigns is 1 DM and 4 players. Usually you can get up to 6 before it starts getting hairy, but 4 was always like the best number of players for sure. So
wasn't too bad. Yeah, as soon as like there's a point when if you have too many people, there are just too many places things can go wrong.
Yep.
It's harder to manage.
It's rough. I think the biggest one we tried to do, we wanted to do it as a one-shot. And we kind of made like a big party out of it, knowing it was just going to be a mess anyway. I think there was about 12 people total. And like 5 of the people just ended up breaking off from the group and doing their own thing, and it just turned into 2 D&D campaigns happening side by side with each other.
Let's all just, we're gonna go this direction. I'd like to start a farm with my brethren. You guys can go off and fight.
It was fun to give it a try because we knew it probably wasn't going to work, and then it ended up just turning into 2 separate D&D campaigns. So I was like, okay, great.
Well, you also have that like balance. Like some people like to like get into the action of story, like of the story of the campaign, and then other people like to just explore and see what they can find. And so it's entirely dependent on your DM, because if you have a really good DM, they can go roll with whatever. But it does not work if half your group really wants to just go fight shit, and the other half's like, I want to see what's behind this tavern. I feel like something shady's going on, you know. And
And that's all the really DM has to do is like, yes, you should prepare specific combats and specific plot turns, but you can't like write a story.
Yeah.
You basically just have to turn whatever the players want to do into part of the plot.
Yeah.
So the greatest example, we always have the fun, like, put the DM on the spot moment where, like, we'll go into a town and they'll do the overall description and then, like, okay, we're looking for, like, a good armory, and he'll come up with, like, 2 or 3 armories. And it's like, okay, what about, like, a clothing shop? And, like, eventually you just wear the DM down to the point where they just start making up ridiculous answers just to shut you up. And the one I was broken down to is they kept going through this thing, and they're like, well, I want to find, like, a nice suit. And I was like, okay, you find something called the sewing shop. And they're like, what do you mean, the sewing shop? It's like, it's in quotes. It says the sewing shop. And to this day, the sewing shop is the most notorious and dominant mafia in the entire campaign history that I have. And I use it in every campaign now. And it's just like, when you walk into the sewing shop, the plot immediately thickens. You always end up in the middle of something you don't want to be in the middle of. So I think that's what a DM really does, is if you want to like encourage your players to not do something, you just have to make it not worth their while. Like, actually make them uncomfortable. You basically punish them for it.
I'd be a terrible DM. I don't think I could do it. I mean, I could probably do it, but I think I would get frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys aren't playing the game right.
Yeah. That's never good to hear those words from a DM.
You're doing it wrong.
You're not doing it right. Well, it's like, well, that's not really how this works.
Yeah. So in making video games, some of the hardest parts of that is figuring out what people are going to want to do when they're playing a game. Like, it's not just what you want them to do, and like there's lots of techniques in trying to get people to do what you want them to do in a video game.
Right.
But there will always be people that want to do other things, and so it's kind of those, like, how do you build in things into a game that keeps it interesting for everybody without, you know, I think we're at a point now where most people don't like the for the newer games anyway, ones where you don't have much choice, where you're just following through the story, unless it's like a straight story game.
As I say, it depends on the genre.
It's literally you're just playing through a story. But I think we're getting significantly used to having significantly more freedom.
Yeah.
I think
open world games definitely show that. And it is weird, right? Because you have things like GTA 5 where people get tired of the built-in options very quickly, but then they can roleplay in it very successfully, and then they just kind of do their own thing that way. But then you have games like the Zelda game, right? Where I don't think many people do custom stuff with that, but there's people who just love doing all the little things that are built into the game.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of weird where you can have 2 different ways of success. Is either you can successfully predict what's going to capture people's interest and just put as much of that into the game as possible, and there's the other one where you just make a system that works, knowing people can overlay that system into practically any situation. So
it's definitely true.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was the midstream mix-up. GG. That's what it does. We get completely off track and mixed up, and then we get to start fresh for the second half.
Yay.
So, madam,
we're fresh.
The second half is yours to control. We'll still have the back and forth, but you can kind of push the direction of conversation as you see fit.
Push it.
Final
wherever
hour.
I want. I wrote down questions because I'm so prepared.
Start firing them.
Yeah, it was so like. Yeah, I never know what I want to talk about. I'm such a tangent person. When I stream, we end up talking about the most random things because it literally takes, like, you like mention one thing and I'm like, oh yeah, I got a story about that. It's really random. You asked me to come up with a story. I won't be able to come up with any of them. Um, what's a good question that I can ask you? Okay, what is the weirdest gift you've ever received? I want to know this because I've gotten some weird ones in my life.
Weirdest gift.
Weirdest. Like the most, like the gift where you got it and you were like, why? Why did you give this to me? Or do you always get good gifts?
Well, it's tough for me because I think
thoughtful.
I'm weirder than any gift I could receive. So it's
So
never
they can't
it's
compete.
never weird by comparison.
Everything is tame.
Yeah, it's never weird by comparison. So I'm trying to figure out if I want to go with like weird as in the least fitting gift I've ever received, or weird in as like one of the gifts I was really happy to get, but if I actually think about it, no one should want to get that as a gift.
I think you should do both. I feel like both of those are accurate to the question.
So what I think as far as the weirdest gift I've received is that's a good question. There's like a spectrum of them. The latest one I've gotten is a bowl with 2 holes in it at the top.
What?
It's a bowl with 2 holes in it at the top.
How can... Like, is it covered with 2 holes on the top?
No, on the side, right at the lip. So like, there's 2 holes right here.
Why?
And you think, what is that for? Do you strain soup with it, or like?
Is it for chopsticks?
It's for chopsticks. It holds your chopsticks on the top of the bowl.
Is that actually right?
Yes.
It
holds chopsticks on the top of the bowl.
That was a complete guess. I'm like, why would you have holes in your food?
And it's
I would
a
just
lovely
spill
gift.
Things.
By itself, it looks completely weird and pointless, but it's actually one of the best bowls I've ever had. I use it.
Does it work?
I use it all the time. It's a great bowl. It's a great bowl.
Somebody gave that to you. They're like, you know what you need? You need this bowl with 2 holes.
You need this bowl with chopstick holes in it. Yes. Yes, Shen does. Shen needs that. That's the most recent one I could think of. I was trying to think more back in the past. Like an unfitting gift that I received that I wouldn't use.
Yeah, I don't like giving people gifts. Okay, that's not true. I love giving people things. But I don't like giving people gifts when I have to give people gifts.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much pressure to find something.
Right.
My favorite things are like when I'm somewhere and I see something and I'm like, so and so would like this, and so I just buy them that thing because like I'm like, this is them. They need this. Those are the weirdest gifts too, because you're like, they actually, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of like giving like standard gifts for Christmas or birthdays, like I've never been good at that.
Right. I think it's better anyway, is buying people things that you know they want or need as you find them, rather than arbitrarily coming up with something twice a year.
Well, yeah, it's like, I thought of you. Like, you were on my mind, and so I thought of
exactly.
you. I feel like it's significantly more meaningful than like, oh yeah, it's your birthday, so I had to go find you something. Like that requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think of any others?
I was trying to think more along the lines of like an unfitting gift. Something that I didn't really ever use.
Do you want me to give you an example?
Sure.
My father gives the worst gifts. But they make me laugh every single time. I think I was like 17 or 18. And for Christmas, I go up to Canada, and so I saw my dad, and he always has a gift for Christmas. But the gift that he got me this one year was this pillow that had King Kong's face on it, but like protruding from the pillow. So it wasn't like a flat pillow with a picture on it. It was like a shaped pillow.
Faces on pillows are never good. Faces on
and,
fabric are
so
never
you can't
good.
even like use it as a pillow because like you can't lay on that. Like that's not comfortable.
Right.
So it's like a decorative King Kong pillow. And this had nothing to do with anything I'd
Right.
never spoken about. I don't even think I'd seen the movie that I'm guessing this was based off at the time. And so I opened the script and I'm like, why? And he's like, I don't know. Thought you'd like it. I was like, Dad. Like, what? I had that for a really long time. I don't think I have it anymore because it was just
one
like
of the ones I
example
got that kind of flopped, even though it probably shouldn't have. So I guess this kind of fits. It was a Ethernet kit. So it was like it was specialized crimping and cutting and pinching wiring tools for electronics. So Ethernet phone cords, power cables, things like that. Which is something you'd think I would use a lot of. I've never used it. I've never had to recap an Ethernet cord. I've never had to extend an HDMI cable. Like, I have everything I would need to do it, but I've never done it. I've never used that kit.
seems like a lot of work.
Well, it's not. It's just not something that comes up often, because usually if you need something, you're going to buy it with it, right? So if I get a monitor, I'm going to get a monitor with an HDMI cable. I'm not going to take my 3-foot HDMI cable and turn it into a 10-foot HDMI cable, right? Like, I can just buy a 10-foot HDMI cable. So there may come a day where I have to resplice the end of an Ethernet cable, and I will be ready. But
You're like, I got this, and then you'll go to use it, and it won't have like the one thing you
right,
need.
it'll be everything but the one thing I need it for.
Is that how it works? I'll be like, yes, I have the thing for this.
I've been saving this for 14 years to do this, and nope, not the one you need.
Or you won't be able to find it. That's like, there are things I know we have. Like, I know for a fact we have them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I need it, I cannot find it anywhere. And so I end up having to like buy another version of it, because it's either spend the next, 12 hours looking for it, possibly not finding it, or spend $12 and buy a new one. So you're like, all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as giving gifts, I think my favorite story to tell is I would usually buy my dad a weird tool every Christmas, and that was kind of my thing. Is like I would always get people weird gifts, but they actually needed them. So like one time I got my brother a widget he always made mixed drinks for every social occasion. So I got him a widget, and it has a computer chip in it and a little display on the handle, and you can actually look up like 4,000 different mixed drinks in the handle to get the measurements for whatever you're making. And then that kind of turned into a joke where we were trying to find the most obscure things with electronics, like with a computer chip in it. Like that was the framing of the gifting, is how weird of a thing with a computer chip in it can we find it? So it's like toasters with a computer chip in it, or nutcrackers with a computer chip in it. Like we're trying to find like what's the weirdest thing with a computer chip in it we can find. So one year,
need to have tech in it.
One year I got my dad a angle grinder, which is basically like the two-handed thing, and then the big stone blade that just grinds down metal or whatever. Anyway, I was like, I don't need this. What am I going to do with this? I don't need an angle grinder. And it was like 7 months went by, and then he had to work on a new patio, and he wanted to do a metal fence around it. And wouldn't you know, the perfect tool for working with metal fencing is an angle grinder. And then like he was using it for everything. Like he was looking for opportunities to use the angle grinder on. It was like always get like a random text at a random time. It now. It's like, hey, I just used the angle grinder again. Great stuff.
Apparently you knew before he did.
That's what I kind of do, is I can kind of get that read on people. Just like, and that's beyond gift giving, just people in general. I think what it is I can hone in on people's insecurities really well. And that allows me to kind of cater myself to them so I can be a better friend, and I can kind of nudge them in the ways that are more healthy and profitable for them. So it's just kind of that knack of being able to like look at someone, kind of see the direction and trajectory they're on, and be like, you know what you could need.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've exhausted that one. Let me
Good
see.
stuff.
I got a good question for you. Okay, this is kind of like just like a broad question, but with like the craziness of the world, what's something you've learned in the last year? It could literally be anything, like something specific or something broad.
Within the confines of a pandemic or social
It could be
movements or
it could be completely unrelated to the pandemic. But I mean, there's like a solid chance you've possibly learned something because of it, but
trying to think along the lines of like lessons maybe that I've learned. I think really it may not be something I've learned, but something that has grown in importance is, I think some people would frame it as identity culture. And I don't know if I would say I am more for it or more against it based on how you defined it. But I think it's very unhealthy to try to define yourself so rigorously. Like, finding yourself and defining yourself are two very different things. And I think it can be very detrimental to a lot of people because they can't find themselves, so then they define themselves instead. Right?
yeah.
So maybe someone is struggling a lot with relationships, and then they'll latch on to their bisexuality more than maybe a commitment issue or a non-monogamous sexuality that they have that they don't want to take the time to understand.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this knack to find a group that kind of shares your problems and then be like, okay, this is just the problem we all have. Great. And it's like, well, that doesn't...
Instead of actually doing anything about it.
That doesn't help. That doesn't help. Like, yes, it's good that there are people who understand what you're going through, but hiding behind that definition isn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
And like, so that's the biggest example I can come with. And then that can kind of be like a personal experience that I learned a couple years back. I was living with a woman who was had constant chronic fatigue and a couple other issues. And it always seemed to be like thyroid related, but there was never anything specifically wrong with her thyroid. And she didn't know what was wrong with her for like months. And that is the only time you have an excuse, is when you don't know what is wrong. That is the time for sympathy. Yeah. That is the time for coddling. That's the time for empathy and letting the person be the victim of that situation and supporting them through it. But then once you know what's wrong, you now have the responsibility. It's not to say you should be blamed for everything. It's not to say you should be re-victimized, right? But
yeah,
like, let's say you have been lashing out angrily at a lot of your friends lately and you don't know what's wrong. And then you get diagnosed with depression. And you're still lashing out at your friends and you say, sorry, it's my depression acting up again. Well, in my book, that doesn't count because now you know what it is.
Yeah.
So you should be able to identify the situation, or at least work to be able to identify the situation and go about it more preemptively. Be like, hey, I feel like I'm not going to be able to handle the situation well. Can you just leave me alone? Or I need to leave because I'm not doing well. Right? And that's hard. It's hard to do that because you feel like you're discarding people. You feel like you're not treating them fairly or whatever. And some people won't understand it. Honestly, if they're not going to understand that, they shouldn't be in your life anyway because they're going to make your condition worse. So that's kind of where I come at to that angle. It says when you broaden that more to like the identity, is that you only have an excuse when you don't know what's wrong. But once you know what's wrong, it's your responsibility to manage it. And if you can't manage it, you need to find help to manage it. And that's...
I mean, a lot of that you're talking about in terms of, I'm part of a bunch of like mental health groups and some other groups for things. And we say a lot like it explains the behavior, but it doesn't excuse it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really true. Cause like people, you know, you can expect people to give you some grace for a while, but there's only so much abuse people can take when you're not, you know, trying to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And like, of course, you know, like there are certain situations that just suck. But you need to find people to be around that are good to be around you and aren't making things worse or, you know, making you worse for whatever reason. And I struggle with that a bit. I have fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically in pain 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't talk about it a lot. I talk about it occasionally on stream. I've been dealing with it for a couple of years now. And a lot of people, it's always really interesting because they'll be like, I didn't know you were in pain.
Mm.
And I was like, well, if I acted like I was in pain all the time, no one would want to be around me. Like there's only so much people can take if you're, you know, constantly like complaining or, you know, talking about it. It's like, of course there are people that like I talk to about it. Like my husband gets to hear the worst of it because he married me, so he signed up for that. But like I've found for me anyway that the easiest way to cope with things that I can't control like that, like I can be medicated to some degree and I can, like, there are certain things that I can do, but not focusing on it, like it's just a thing that I have to deal with. It's not all that I am, or like it's not overbearing to the point where it consumes my whole identity, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, I have chronic pain, and yes, it screws things up in my life pretty frequently. But like, that's my cross to bear, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Makes sense. I was family friends with a family, and both children had mitochondrial disease. And that's very much that chronic flare-up and things are always not going well kind of a situation. And kind of grew up with both of them for most of my childhood. And the son had a lot of complications, and he didn't make it past like 16. But the daughter didn't have as many complications, and she's still alive today. But it treaded that line because, like, generally they knew what was wrong, but then things would happen. So like the one daughter would like gain 50 pounds in like 6 months. And like, something changed. like something's wrong. Like something happened. Yeah. Like we didn't change any medications. We haven't made any major changes to the diet. Like something just is shutting down or not working or something. And then kind of the same thing happened with the son, which unfortunately resulted in death, where it's just like going along and then plonk, and it just kind of isn't the same anymore. So, and I said that kind of falls back into that not knowing what's wrong situation. So I think it's just the ability to be honest with yourself about it, right? Is you're not always going to know everything about yourself, and even when you do, things can change or your understanding can change. But I guess it comes down to intent, right?
Yeah.
It's what's the intent? Good question. I don't even know what the question was.
Hard one.
We got to a good one.
We got there. I got something out of you, so that's good. Let's see. Oh, I was thinking about this recently. What is your favorite smell? Do you have any smells that have like really strong memories attached to them? Like if you smell it, your brain just like is like instantly happy, or...
You see, now you're getting into the mind of Shen. The mind of Shen is a very manipulative mind. And I have to like safeguard against my own manipulative tendencies to make sure I'm not doing it maliciously or inappropriately. So I go to great lengths to understand all of the subconscious things that happen with human beings so that I can make sure I'm not doing it. And while generally I do that for the sake of other people, the knowledge of it kind of fortifies myself against it as well.
Yeah.
And so like, let's take bad dreams, for example. The only two things we know for a sure fact scientifically about sleeping and dreaming is that the two things your body does during sleep is it recovers from emotional stress and it scans your entire body for anything that's wrong. And so how that transpires in dreaming is that like people who are in comas or are unconscious for an extended period of time with a paralytic injury have like gargoyle nightmares. Well, turning to stone, unable to move. Kind of makes sense when your body's like, I'm trying to move my muscles and it's not working. Like that's, you know, that's transpiring. Or like, as far as emotional recovery, like I had a dream about my teeth falling out when I was looking in the mirror. Well, teeth falling out is the first traumatic experience of adulthood. That's like the first sign of growing up that is a traumatic event. So it can bury itself into your brain psychologically. So if you're having struggle with growing up or losing innocence or facing adult issues, you're going to have a dream about your teeth falling out, right? So by understanding those basic concepts, you can actually rationalize out a lot of stuff that otherwise seems weird. So when it comes to like memory formation, I try to make most of my long-term memory formation conscious. And so things like smells, I make very sure to enjoy as the smell and not because of my bias. And I think that goes to cooking mostly for me, because I like to share my cooking with people and I like to create and replicate experiences that I've had to share with other people. And in order to do that successfully, you need to keep in mind, like, what did I like just because I happen to like something versus what's actually good, right? So like
that's a hard distinction for a lot of people.
Some of the stuff I'll eat at 10 p.m. at night, I would never feed to anyone that I cared about.
Yeah.
And it's not to say it's gross. I love it. But I know I love it and not that it's good. So smell is a big part of that. But so I wouldn't say there's any memories attached to smells that I really like, because I consciously make sure that that's not my bias. But there's a certain floral French vanilla smell that always gets me good. I have a plant that produces it called Queen of the Night. It's a vine cactus. It only blooms for one night. And it's a giant bloom this big. And it has that nice, sweet, French vanilla-y floral smell. It's delicious. That's the smell I always love. It's kind of like jasmine, if you ever smelt jasmine with the night blooms. Same, it might actually be a relative of jasmine, honestly. Same kind of smell, that sweet floral smell. I don't like the dusty floral smells, like the rose or the old lady perfume. I don't like the dusty smell, but I like the sweet floral smell.
Yeah, I can't do artificial scents. Like anytime they're trying to like recreate a smell, they always just give me headaches and make me feel ill.
They do.
I think I just can't do it. I'm like overly sensitive to it. I love natural smells. Vanilla is actually probably one of my favorite smell, and I think it's just because pretty much anything with vanilla in it to me tastes good. So I smell it. Like, yeah,
it's a simple palate.
Yeah, it doesn't require much. Well, for me, like growing up, I had a lot of stomach problems, and so I had a really terrible relationship with food. Because I didn't know what was making me sick, and no one knew what was making me sick.
Right.
And so I just associated like a lot of things with not feeling well. And so like when you're like 6, right, you're like, I ate all of that food, now I feel ill. So you just start to kind of cut everything out. And it's like, I know that this one thing doesn't make me feel ill. So that's all I want to eat. Like, give me some white bread. Like, I'm not gonna feel like mashed potatoes. Like, I know I'm not gonna feel sick after I
Saltines
eat
and
this.
ginger ale, please.
Pretty much. It was a very interesting thing getting into adulthood and starting to figure out like what things were making me sick, because
Right.
then I had the opportunity to like go and try all of these foods that like I wouldn't touch as a child because they were too risky.
Right.
Right? Like anything that looked complicated, I wouldn't eat because
Right.
I was like, there's no way. Like I'm gonna get through this without being super sick. Um, so like finding like different foods. Like I really love Thai food and I really love like sushi and stuff now, and things that I would have never like touched as a child because they're again complicated looking foods. Um, but yeah, pretty much any smell that has to do with food makes me happy. Maybe I just really like food now. I like it significantly better.
Food's good. Food's good.
Yeah, I like really good food. I always feel very excited when I get to have like go out and have something like really like well prepared. I'm not a good cook at all. I'm getting better, but I'm not a good cook at all.
Well,
My husband's pretty
I'll keep
good,
you
but
and
he's
the
not.
family in mind when I host my next dinner party. So.
Yes. Oh my God. Pretty much if you want me to love you in any way, just feed me. I'm pretty sure that's how my husband's kept me around so long, because he just keeps feeding me, and so I'm like, cool, because I hate feeding myself. Like, I'll go out of my way to just not eat. So if I have to feed myself, if food is available, I will eat all of it. Um, but it's like the process. I'm trying to break that, so I've started cooking and like trying recipes, and we've done some subscription boxes just to kind of get me some exposure to like different types of foods to cook.
Right.
And it's helping a bit because I'm like understanding what makes food taste good.
Right.
Instead of just like trusting other people to produce food that tastes good for me. Oh.
Yeah, well, never too late to learn.
Yeah, it seems a little weird learning how to cook in your 30s, but it's fine. It's something. I could bake, so I got away with it.
There you
Like,
go.
I could bake a really good pie, bake good cookies. I did that all through
Those are two
college.
different skills. Cooking and baking are two different skills.
I'm a math person, so baking's good.
Great, yes.
Right? Like baking is very it feels significantly more scientific to me than cooking does, because cooking's a lot more flexible and intuitive, whereas baking, there are certain things you have to do a certain way, otherwise it won't do what you want it to do. And I stress baked all through college, so there was always like a very large amount of baked goods in my house when I was in college. My classmates really enjoyed it because I didn't eat very much of it, and so I would just bring it to school. Fed all the professors, fed all the kids in my class. I'm like, here's all these cookies.
Yeah, I did that when I was in Colorado because I was living by myself most of the time. So I'd want to bake things. I was like, I'm not going to eat 24 cookies by myself. I just bring them to people and it's like, can you take these away from me so I don't eat them, please?
Okay, no, the best part of it was the first time I did it, I baked all of these cookies, and right, like I'm going to eat like 5 of these cookies, and I've made like 2 dozen more, right? Like because stress baking, so you just make like large quantities of things.
Right.
And so I like took them to class with me, and I'm very introverted, which is always really funny when the fact that I'm streaming, like I'm shy, people freak me out.
Right.
And so I like brought the cookies to class with the intention of sharing them with people, but like I didn't know anybody in class particularly well, and so like I didn't know how to start that conversation. Like, hello, fellow classmates, would you like some cookies? Like that probably would have worked, but like I wasn't there. But my professor at the time was probably one of the weirdest math teachers I've ever had.
Oh, it was good.
He was amazing. He like danced and like talked to the numbers in class.
Nice.
He was amazing. I adored him. He was probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. But anyway, he sees that I have this like giant container of cookies, and he's like, "Are those cookies?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What are they for?" And I was like, "I brought them for everyone." He's like, "Oh, cool." And so he takes the cookies and he walks around and he makes everyone in the class take a cookie. He's like, "You guys, these cookies are for you. You need to eat one." And they were really good because I was half decent at baking. And that was it. After that point, anytime I walked in with baked goods, I basically just like got swarmed by people. They're like, "Yes, baked goods." Professors yelling across the hallway, like, "Bring me some."
It's a good
But it was nice.
notoriety to
So it
have.
didn't. Yes, that's a reputation you want in the math department. As lady with cookies. Um, but it was good because there's also I now I stress clean. And when you have children, there's always cleaning. Like it never ends. Like
Yep.
your house is never clean.
Yeah.
It literally gets messy as you're cleaning it. So like it's never clean. So stress cleaning works because there's always something to clean. But when you're in college and you're like living with one roommate, it takes you like maybe an hour to clean the entire apartment.
Right.
And then you're done. So I had to switch over to something else. Although I'm sure my kids would love it if I stress baked again.
Mm. But then you have to clean after you bake.
Exactly. Why, like, it's just never ending. It is just never ending. We're struggling with one of my cats had surgery recently, and so he's having a lot of accidents.
Ah, okay.
And so I feel like I'm so underwater with cleaning right now because it's like constant laundry. Because you know, cats when they have accidents, they tend to go on things. They don't just like go in the corner. They're trying to like get comfort, so they'll like go on a blanket or they'll go on clothing or you know they'll go on top of something, and so there's just like constant cleaning. And I can't even feel bad because of the surgery we did, like what he went through and what we did to him. Like,
yeah,
I don't blame him at all for it, but it's just one more thing.
Yeah.
Do you have other pets?
I
saw your cat.
The two cats. I've had a lot of different pets in my life. And I'm at the point now where I feel like I've cleaned up enough poop in my life that I don't need to do it ever again. So my selection of pets these days is, do I have to clean up its poop? And if the answer is yes, I will likely not engage.
So no children.
Not at the moment, no.
That's we were at the bank yesterday, and apparently our banker, because we were opening another account, and she was like, "Oh, talking about baby fever." She's like, "Tell me something that'll make me not want to have kids." And I was like, "Well, how much do you like working with bodily fluids?" Because it literally, like, and it doesn't really end. Like, it gets slightly less gross for a while once they're potty trained and whatnot. But, like, you're always going to have to deal with, like, stuff because they're children. And, like, you can't not take care of them. And it's just, like, constant. We did that for a while. I was like, we just got cats this summer. But we didn't have pets for a long time. I'd had pets pretty much all growing up and then, you know, through college and stuff. But there was a pretty huge chunk of time where we just didn't have any pets because I was just so tired of dealing with bodily fluids that I was like, I can't do this for like extra animals in the house on top of the children. But
yeah, so at this point I would probably just do reptiles for now. I've had a lot of reptiles pretty successfully, so I like making what are called vivariums. So a vivarium is half aquarium, half terrestrial.
Oh, okay.
So usually you have a plateau, slope, water, and then there's a whole science to making that work. Because you have to keep the water clean, but you can't like chlorinate it because that'll kill all the plants, right? So like you have to. It's a process. But it's a fun thing, and then you have like a nice thing, right? You have like usually I have a 1 foot by 4 foot tank, and it's about 6 inches of soil with gravel and activated charcoal, and then the water is about 2-3 inches on the other side. And so you can have all different kinds of plants growing in there, and you can have different. So the one time I had it, I had communal geckos on the land part, I had firebelly newts in the water part, and I had a tiny snail population that kind of was making everything work. So that was really cool.
Snails.
And then I had
snails are very helpful.
I had some ferns in there and some tiny little aquatic things that grew on the edges. So it's kind of fun just making those little systems of things.
Yeah, I absolutely love snakes, and I would love to own some snakes. But the problem is with small children, again, like I don't trust them not to hurt small snakes.
Right.
And then I'm not sure I trust having very large snakes with the kids in the house. And so that's one of those things that'll probably happen like when the kids are in high school or older.
Right.
I can like trust that they are going to be more helpful than harmful.
Yes.
And I mean, that's with like a lot of pets with kids. It's like these poor things don't deserve to be tortured by small people, right? Like they didn't ask for that.
Correct.
The cats are hilarious. The cats are absolutely in love with my kids. Bartleby, who's the cat that just had surgery, we spent a lot of money keeping him alive because he is completely bonded to my daughter to like a ridiculous degree. Like he follows her around, he sleeps on her when she's having like meltdowns. She's got some issues that she has to deal with. He like will come up and like lay on her chest and like purr like right into her neck while she's freaking out. And like a normal cat does not run towards a screaming child. Like that's not like a standard pet thing. Like maybe a dog, because dogs just like to fix everything, but like cats not so much. They're usually like, nope, I'm out of here. But yeah, he's like he lays on her all the time. He'll come, like he's always with her, and he talks to her, like he meows at her. He doesn't to us. Like I can pick this cat up and he looks at me like I am a crazy person. He's like, why are you holding me? Like put me down. Like he only likes me now because I feed him. My daughter used to feed him, but we had to switch him to wet food because of his surgeries and his issues and stuff. And so I've been doing most of the feeding, although my daughter's trying to take over, so I'll get less love, I think, once I stop feeding him again. Can't buy the cat's love.
Yeah.
Luckily, our other cat loves me, so I don't feel completely neglected.
Yeah.
Our other cat, RoboCop, is a sweetheart. He actually is on my stream, not super frequently, but he likes to be in here, so he's more of an attention cat, which is nice. But yeah, they're sturdy. The kids, they're good with the kids.
It's good.
You can't have non-sturdy pets when you have children. Unless you can keep them separate somehow.
Fish are good for that.
Yes. I would like, it would have to be a huge fish tank though, that the kids could not like knock over.
Correct.
All I could imagine is my son like dropping things into the fish tank constantly. Or like trying to get in it. Could see that. Maybe it's just my children. Maybe I just have chaotic children. I think
that's children in general. I think that's children in general.
I don't know. I've met some people with like calm, well-behaved children, and I'm like, where did you get them?
I don't know.
Did you order these? Like, where did they come from?
I don't know.
Are you doing something special with your parenting skills? What's your secret? What I've learned so far, though, is that it usually doesn't. I mean, bad parenting can make a huge difference in the way a kid behaves, but like, good parenting doesn't always fix when you have a very strong-willed child or like a very outgoing child that's, you know, gonna do what they're gonna do. Both my kids were runners.
Okay.
And like people be like, yeah, like I'm never gonna put my kid on a leash, and I'm like, wait until you have two children running in opposite directions and like you have to keep them from running into traffic. Like I've had to tackle my child before. Yeah, that was pretty fun. Like full on like run and tackle him because he was already like 3 feet away from me and he was just playing nicely, and then we're in a park and he just like gets up and just takes off towards like the nearest danger. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm gonna tackle my child right now. And all the other parents are like, you have no control of your children. I'm like, you have no idea. That's fun though. I love my kids, just in case anyone's wondering. It's have to like end with that. I talk about my kids like they're like the worst, and then I'm like, oh wait, I do love my children, I promise. They just make me tired.
Well, that's good. I don't have anything along those lines, honestly. I wish I had something to fire back at you, but
like, I don't know. You never had to tackle something?
Not in that capacity, no. Actually, I have a whispering quality about me, actually. I can like make eye contact with a baby and it will just stop. It'll just be like it's dazed. completely dazed.
What you're saying is, had you the baby, we're good.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. It could be having the worst time. It could be teething. It could have a wet diaper. It could be hungry, all at the same time. And I'll just look at it and be like, huh? It loses everything. So.
My favorite with babies is, so my husband has a beard, and you can tell which babies have been around bearded men and have not been around bearded men, because for some reason, like if a baby's never seen bearded men before, they like freak out. Because he loves babies. And so it's so hilarious to me anytime we like meet a new baby and it just starts like screaming bloody murder because he's apparently terrifying with facial hair.
He's got tentacles coming out of his head.
Yeah, my kids don't have that problem because like all like their grandparents and like all of their uncles, everybody has beards.
Well, then you have the other problem though, is if they ever shave
it off. Weirded out by people without beards.
Yeah, if you ever shave it off, then the kid is mortified. Like, who are you? What did you do with my father?
We haven't done it. I actually have never seen my husband without facial hair. I mean, I've seen pictures of him without facial hair, but I've never actually. And I've told him a few times. I'm like, I sort of just want to see what you look like without facial hair. It's like a morbid curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably hate it completely. But yeah, it's very weird. Like obviously I can't grow facial hair, and so like I don't know, like that decision making process for guys. You like decide what to do with your face.
Yeah. We don't talk about it.
I mean, that's something you obviously have.
Yeah,
like this is a choice.
We don't
talk
about it.
This is not just how it naturally grows and like maintains itself.
Personal, private thing. We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. Well, what we do with our faces is our business.
Well, it's like art. It's like it's
definitely a form of personal expression, right? It's self-expression. Right. So.
For a lot of people, I guess some people it's just like either they do something with it or they don't.
Or an insecurity, like they don't have a chin, and they only.
Do you not have a chin?
I have too much chin actually. This skin behind my chin, like I could be 20 pounds underweight, I'll still have a giant blob right behind my chin for no reason. It's the weirdest thing.
I've got the.
It's literally a double chin. It's not, and it doesn't even go like this. It's just like this little. It's right here. It's literally a second chin.
So now we know what you're hiding, right?
That's what I'm hiding. That's what I'm hiding with my facial hair. And it doesn't need much. Like I've done like a really short shaved chin strap thing, and that's enough to even it out. But
give it some
without it,
to like give it a
without
contrast.
It's a little weird. I'm also mostly cheek, so it's like cheek, and chin, right? So like. I have big cheeks.
It's just a lot,
right? Because this is hiding. I mean,
yeah, you can see like the reflection of the light
a lot of
your
cheek, right? So like,
chin.
See, it's all there. It's all cheek. So I have to like frame my face to make it more vertical, so that the cheeks don't take over everything.
Yeah, I'm sometimes jealous. Like, there's nothing I can do about whatever the heck is going on down here. I have an overbite, so I have this like. Really like defined, you can't see it on stream particularly well, but like I have this like really defined like bump, and it's like a little shelf down here.
Oh, okay.
So I always have to make sure like I clean my face really well, because like it's like this part of me is always like,
gotcha.
I don't want to say gross, but like, you know how like stuff sits on your face. Yeah. Wash your face, people. It's good for you. Keep it clean.
Any leftovers from the previous meal that hanging out.
Oh, yeah, I was always really self-conscious when I was younger, just like about my face in general. I've got my like these nose bumps. My husband likes to make fun of my nose bumps.
Your nose
bumps. Very defined.
It's a singular nose. I have a singular nose. This nose is only one other person in my family that has this nose, and they're my great-great-grandmother on my mother's side. So once every 4 generations.
Interesting.
Does this nose
I don't even know, like I don't know whose nose I got. It got bigger too after I had children. That's something that like I don't think they really make clear to people. When you have babies, like your body like legitimately changes in like weird ways.
Weird.
Like I'm shaped differently than I was
your hormones
prior to having
change
children.
and your genes change. Because you had a son, correct?
Yeah, I have a daughter.
So you now have Y chromosomes. Congratulations.
That's right. I have boy DNA in me.
You have boy DNA in you. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's definitely weird because you don't know what's going to happen, so it's like surprise. There's no controlling it. You get to just kind of go with the flow and see what happens.
Looks like you're handling it quite well. So
thank you. It's fine. It's good. The only part that I hate is my feet got bigger. I already had
bigger
really
shoes,
big feet
no
to begin
problem.
with. I have huge feet. They don't make huge feet for women. Or huge feet. They don't make huge shoes for women. Well, they do. They just don't make pretty huge shoes. And there's like,
okay.
Occasionally you want pretty shoes.
Gotcha. You can't
They're
wear
doing
Crocs
a
all
little
the
better
time.
now. I've never actually worn Crocs. Is that
Me
like
neither.
blasphemous? I've never worn Crocs.
I'm a sandals guy. I'll always go sandals.
They seem very confusing. And
I just think they would be
probably
gross.
wouldn't like them. I
think they would be gross.
I have issues with like textures and seams and stuff, and it just seems like it has a lot of textures and seams in a shoe.
I had a friend that had those hiking shoes where it's like foot shaped rather than shoe shaped.
With the toes?
With the toes?
The toe shoes?
I was like, ew. Like, how do you clean that? Like, ew. Ew.
Some people swear by them.
Like,
I would rather just be barefoot
bad.
and risk dying by stepping on something.
Like, it doesn't
like if I need foot
bad,
control, I'd rather just use my feet.
It doesn't look bad, but I would clean them twice a day. I would be paranoid about it.
I spent most of my childhood barefoot. That's like back in the day.
I'm barefoot when I can be, but sadly, most adult life requires shoes.
We live near a beach, so like shoes were not a good idea because like when you go to the beach, shoes just lend themselves to being full of sand. With bare feet, if you like walk to the beach, then you play around in the sand, you come back. By the time you get back, most of the sand's gone, so you're good.
The sand I have by me is very fine, so it actually like polishes my feet. So my feet are actually in better condition when I'm barefoot than when I'm not barefoot.
Yeah, I noticed recently. I just like had taken my shoes off in the car, and so I like walked from the car to our apartment barefoot, and apparently my feet have zero like stamina is not the right word. Like, you know how like you build up a tolerance, or like your skin gets thicker. Yeah, like it couldn't handle. My poor sensitive feet could like not handle walking on one of the like bumpy sidewalks. I was like, oh man, childhood me would be so disappointed.
Well, we're approaching the end of time. You have any last minute questions you wanted to get to flush out the show?
Some of your answers were really interesting. What are you like? What's coming up for you? Do you have anything like big new things coming up?
Well, we got the Tilt Takeover for season 22 that I'm trying to orchestrate.
Yeah.
We got Record Hunters season 5.
Wow.
That's gonna be big. I have to build another 1 hour track. And Tilt commercial, actually. I'm going to be working on the Tilt commercial this week. Don't know if I'll get it done this week, but it'll be close to being done. So
it's exciting. You're always working, aren't you?
Always. It never stops.
Always. Well, it's just, like you just seems like you're doing so many things at once. Like you must be spending so much time on it.
Yep.
Because none of these things take all these things take so much time prep wise, like before and after.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that I think people don't realize about stream or like content creation online is how much time outside of the actual streaming is required to make it work.
Yeah,
most people.
Most of my streams I actually don't prep enough for because I don't have the time to do it. And there's always things like I have to fix midstream, like, oh, shit. I didn't set this up. Hold on.
Or there's like things that you want to do, but you just never get to them because you're always working on something else.
Yeah. Because Bax and I, we check in twice a week with each other. And there's always a point in the conversation where he's like, so when do you sleep? I was like, Bax, I keep telling you this. You got to stop sleeping, man.
It's cutting into your creation time.
Right. It's like,
sleep is for the week.
I'll have the video done 2 hours after we do the recording session. And then he won't have it done for until the day before we need it. And he'll be like, I just don't know how you have time to do it. I was like, you got to stop sleeping, man. You're wasting a third of your life. Come on.
solid, healthy advice over here at Shins TV. Just don't sleep.
So,
that's the key to success.
That's it. Just kill yourself. Just kill yourself.
Yes.
Kill yourself doing what you love. It's that simple.
Yeah. I suppose as long as you love it, right?
Yeah. Cool. Well, lovely.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's been delightful. Do you want to stick around for some Q&A for the after show? Doesn't go long often, but we can do that. So
yeah,
we're going to wrap up this YouTube portion of the show. Sorry for the frame loss today. Twitch has been weird. I'm not the only one, unfortunately, who's been hit with some bad connections during the daytime. Seems fine during the night, but during the day, maybe there's just too many people on Twitch. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
But the audio should be good, so thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. Make sure you check out Hazard Bunny's stream. She will eventually be streaming more soon again. She still streams, but she will stream more soon. So keep your eyes out for that. And we'll see you next time. Bye.